Hello, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon. Hi, Frank. Feel free to come on camera. This is going to be a bit of a different experience. I'm hoping it will be a little more discussion oriented than many of ours have been. I want to see people as they come in. We have folks just kind of dripping in. I mean, I guess dripping in isn't really a very good way to say it. But we'll give people another minute to join, and then we're going to go ahead and start. So I promised you an 11 a.m. start. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome. All right, Frank, you're the only one who's courageous enough. There we go, Andrew's on. Nice to see you, Andrew. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. We have, looks like we have about 10 folks here. We'll probably pick up a few more. I noticed a lot of people register and then go download the recording, so we'll give them something to watch here. Hi, Robert. Thanks for joining. Andrew's coming in again.
Thank you.
Okay, I am going to share the screen so we can launch into it today. So today, the webinar started with the idea of doing a toolkit for building trust. And since I came up with this idea a couple of months ago, and I actually started putting things into place, we're still going to do a lot of the same stuff, but I've shifted just a little bit what the actual content is going to end up being. So I'm really hoping that today you all will work with me to help me understand what is most useful for you when it comes to thinking about your trust relationships. Just a little bit of housekeeping as we get into it. We are recording the webinar. You'll receive links to the recording and to the presentation. And once we get the final product itself, which I'm now calling a trust relationship survival kit, we will send that out to everybody as well. Our plan today is about 30 minutes of presentation time plus question and answer. I'm probably going to stretch that around and just do the Q&A as we go along, but we're still looking at about 45 minutes of content. If you have questions that you don't feel you need to bring up in the moment, feel free to put them into the chat. And as I said, we'll be pausing throughout the presentation to check it, to check the chats for questions. If you feel like putting your camera on, please do. It's going to be a lot more fun if we can see each other and really interact with each other versus me sitting here blathering at you. And then finally, we're going to be using some of the Zoom features. Today, we're going to be doing mostly chat, conversation, and we have a brief poll at the end. Most importantly is just to have fun with this. Hopefully by the end of this 45 minutes, you all will have thought a little bit more about your trust relationships and what you need to do in the coming year to really thrive as you grow those relationships. For any of you for whom it's your first time joining us, I'm Noelle Michaelenko. I'm the CEO of Trusted Advisor Associates. I always forget to put my introduction slide in, so forgive me. I've been doing this for about 12 years with Trusted Advisor. I actually started off as a client myself when I was in a consulting role. Overall, Trusted Advisor Associates has spent about 20 years working with people just like you on how to build deeper trust in relationships. I promise I'm not plugging for the books here. It's just a way to say that our books, the Trusted Advisor, Trust-Based Selling, and the Trusted Advisor Field Book are the basis for the concepts that we'll be talking about today. And of course, we do a lot of things. We have online learning, we have some workshops, and then these free every other month webinars that we do, which helps me stay current with you all and what you're experiencing. So as we get started, it's January, and I'm sure everybody has been through the same kind of resolution building that most of us go through at the beginning of the year. I'm curious, when it comes to your professional relationships, specifically your relationships, what are your resolutions for 2023? And go ahead and just open up that chat window and type in one relationship resolution that you have for the coming year. Make sure you're chatting to everyone, please. Otherwise, Kathy will get all of your answers and I won't see any of them. So good, they're starting to come in. Stephen, I'm sorry you're going to be leaving, but thanks for joining while you can. So Jeffrey's curious about being great at asking for introductions. What a fantastic resolution, right? We forget that people love to be helpful. And one way to build trust is to trust someone, just like asking for introductions. More personal relationships with clients. Thanks, Kathleen. Hey, Kathleen, how are you? Good to see you. Complete transition to a new city. Stephen, wow, you've got a lot of change going on right now. I bet with all that change, there's a little bit of anxiety about creating new relationships, communicating more frequently and with purpose. Nice. Vanessa, setting intentions before meetings, keeping the client's interests first. Frank, that's really hard to do, especially with the economies being so unsettled right now, right? It's easy for us to get worried about what's important to us. And sometimes we forget that other people have the same kind of stress going on. Closer relationships, listening, more personal relationships, sustaining even after conflict. That's a great one, Pradeep. Thank you. Transitioning from old to new decision makers. That's a good one, Andrew. Good. And then reviving conversations with clients that have been unresponsive. So it sounds like there are a couple of themes. One theme that I'm seeing in all of these is being more personal. And for those of you who have been with me in the past, I make a very clear distinction between having personal relationships and talking about things that are private. Right? A lot of times we think, oh, we need to make small talk. I have to find out their partner's name or whether or not they have children or what they do when they're not working. That's all information that's private. And sometimes it feels awkward asking for that private information. So we just revert to the business. The good news is that everything in business is personal because we're working with the person. So for those of you who are uncomfortable trying to create friendships with your clients, remember that you can have personal connections with them just by finding out what's important to them related to their careers or related to their roles, right? Treat them like a person, understand what they care about, understand what their goals are. So I love that about getting to know each other and being more personal in our relationships. The other theme that I'm seeing is one of change, right? Which is not uncommon in the new year. Either change in the relationship, I need to revive it because it's stalled, or maybe trust has been broken in the past, or change in the sense that it's all new. Another good news about trust is that trust does not take as long to build as we think. And a lot of the things that will build trust can be done in very short amounts of time if you have the courage to take action. So let's go ahead and look into our trust relationship survival kit. You know, often when we think about being a trusted advisor, and this comes up all the time when I'm doing workshops, people look at it as something that they need to learn or something that they have to do, like it's an event, and at some point they will have completed the event. Much more important, I think, is to think about building trust as a journey. And the old adages all apply. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey, right? It's about what happens when you're trying to get there. So much of what we do in our lives, while it's event-based, we're having conversations, or something's happening in a relationship or in a project, those events are the opportunities that we have to move through our journey. And the more you get familiar with building trust, the more you will see those opportunities as places where you can make a step change increase in the trust. So don't forget that it's not, I had a client one time use this analogy and I loved it. They said, it's like being a parent. You're never finished being a parent. You never complete being a parent, right? And it's the same with trust, with building trust. You never finish it. So we created this toolkit, or this survival kit, if you will, to give you space to pause and think about where you are in your journey, prepare yourself for what's coming, and then do some planning. Make sure you have the right tools and skill sets to move forward in the new year. So part one, where are you today? Right? It is a wilderness out there. Things have been crazy. Maybe you had a fantastic past year. Maybe things were really rocky for you. Wherever you are today is where you are, and that's perfectly okay. Stop for a minute and think about what has led you along your journey over the past, say, 12 months. Maybe think about 2022. What are the things that you accomplished? What are the things that you wanted to do? And I have some specific reflection questions. So we're not going to have time to go through every single question in depth. So let's start with this one. Thinking about your motivation, what inspired you to build trust, and when did you feel particularly energized? Just put into the chat one thing that answers either one of those questions. Where did your inspiration come from around building trust in your relationships last year? And by the way, if it helps, you can think about a particular relationship. Call to mind a relationship where you either feel you built a lot of trust or one where you didn't feel like you got the amount of trust you wanted out of it. Nice. Good. Yeah, Frank, when somebody reaches out to us, that's such a great feeling, right? And it's like that virtuous cycle where things keep getting better and better. Different viewpoints. Pradeep, yeah. Gratitude. Kathleen, I love that. Gratitude for the long-term relationships and not wanting to seem taken for granted. Really important to keep feeding them. Oh, Jeff, I love that. That sense when somebody really gets you, right? And you want to keep that. That is what we call in the trust equation intimacy, right? Because you feel safe with that person. So good. And Tony, for you, it was watching a mentor's trust building exercise. So seeing a role model and having that inspire you. Excellent. So you're getting motivation, and we all have different points of motivation, right? Different things spur us to action. Thinking about your successes and disappointments. Focus in on one, or well, let's focus in on the successes. We'll leave the disappointments for you to do as a personal reflection. When did you significantly increase trust? Think about a particular relationship where you saw a jump in the trust, and what is it that led you to get there? And if you want to just come off mute and talk, I'd love to hear somebody's story about a big success that you had in building trust last year.
Well, I can say something about that.
Hey, Andrew, thanks.
I have a client who I've done work for about 25 years. I'm on my third decision maker, and he's been there. He started just before COVID, and we have a very good relationship, but there's always people nipping at your heels. I'm in the real estate business. My client needed some more office space. we were told by the landlord that nothing was available. I took it upon myself to call all the other tenants on the floor, and turned out the landlord was not telling us the truth. And I was able to get us some space. I told there was a neighboring tenant who wanted to give up space. And one of the things I said to them is, I said, let's try to get this done quickly. And in my business, the landlord pays the commission, even though I work for the tenant. I told this landlord, sub-landlord, that let's not let commission get in the way. Let's just make the deal. And my client appreciated the fact that I had taken matters into my own hands, not trusting the prime landlord. And then I said, look, let's just get this done. I don't want there to be any friction, so I'll do this for free, or I'm not going to take a fee. And he appreciated both of those facts. And we have an arrange. And he said to me, he said, tell me what I owe you. And I said, don't worry about it. It's just part of what we do. And he said, no, I don't want you to work for free.
Nice. Very nice. There are so many wonderful things in that, and the trust principles, which can be guideposts to action. There are 4 trust principles: a focus on the other for the other's sake, not as a means to your own end; a habit of collaboration, right? Truly working together with someone instead of always having it be more of a competitive relationship; a medium to long-term relationship perspective. Think about every interaction not as a transaction, but as part of a journey, if you will, a relationship with that person. And then finally, a default to transparency in all things. And that story that you shared, Andrew, really locks in each of those 4. You were willing to collaborate. You put your client's interest first. Definitely, because you were willing to give up your own commission, and the reciprocity of your client coming back and saying, no, you shouldn't work for free, right? And I don't know your industry particularly well. I don't know commercial real estate at all. I'll say it that way. But I would imagine, given the way things are going, that landlord was probably didn't feel like they were in a position to pay the commission, and felt that if they gave up space from somebody else said they wanted to get out of their lease. I mean, I'm sure that they were just so racked with fear around their own survival that they weren't thinking clearly. They weren't putting their client's best interests at heart. So I love that story. Thank you for sharing it.
Well, actually, the landlord, the owner of the building, wanted us, they were telling us that there was no space on the floor and that we would have to move and sign a longer lease at a higher rental rate, which
Right.
is not what we wanted to do. We wanted to stay where we were and expand contiguously.
Yeah. Sure.
And someone asked a question. So we have an arrangement where on some work we do for this client, they get a small piece of the commission. And the client just told me on that situation, he said, don't give us the rebate because you earned it by doing this.
Very nice. Yeah. And the good news is they know that you're going to go to the mat for them, right? That's the difference between a transactional relationship and that medium to long-term relationship.
But and I'll give my client credit. Like I said, he started 3 years ago. His predecessor set up a lunch for the 3 of us right when he started. It was probably exactly 3 years ago. And he was very transparent. He said, you've done a good job for my predecessor. As long as you keep doing a good job for me, I'm not going to make a change. And I'm telling you the truth. I'm not looking to hire somebody. I'm not looking to trip you up. And I feel like I had as good a relationship with him after a year as I did with his predecessor after 20 years.
Wow.
And I think that's partly due to him and also his trust in his predecessor and her recommendation.
Yeah, that's good. That referred trust, especially, was it you, Andrew? Who was it that was talking about new situations?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. one of the things that is easy for a lot of us who are in professional services roles, it's easy to, and it's another sense of the transactional kind of, it's easy to move forward and forget to stay in touch with people once we've moved along, right? Because you never know where they're going to come back and pop up back into your life. And it's the ones that you're willing to go to the mat for, who, wherever they end up, they're going to reach out to you, right? I mean, the business world is always changing. Who else has a success, an example of where you built significant trust in the past year?
Nicole, I'll share one. This is Kathleen.
Hey, Kathleen.
I had two clients, long-term relationships over 10 years, multiple projects. And I'm in for the benefits sourcing advisory consulting business. And I had an employee who unfortunately sort of became burned out, fell apart on those projects, and disappointed the clients in each of those cases. And so I personally flew out to meet with each client and engage them in planning for course correction, and, you know, swapped personnel on the project and made plans for gaining back our ground, and heard them, you know, first before making those plans, right? Just let them give it, right? And I think that made all the difference in retaining the client relationships and actually building better individual relationships with those stakeholders, and building trust.
Yeah. Kathleen, it's such a, you know, and I'd love to take credit for that, but I don't think that's fair. But what you're saying, and that really is how you make things personal, right? Because demonstrating that to you, you're willing to get on an airplane and fly out there and sit down and meet with them, if that's what's right for them.
Right.
And,
you can take a little credit.
Thank you. Kathleen and I have worked together in the past. And it's funny because when I was saying we tend to let relationships lag, of course, I'm looking at your face and thinking, wow, I haven't been in touch with Kathleen in forever. I had another client who had a similar, we were having a conversation, and he was bemoaning the fact that since COVID, you know, since everybody's interacting, excuse me, virtually now, things have just become so transactional. And he's struggling where 4 years ago, he's in a marketing business, and where 4 years ago, they were, as he described it, his competition for talent was other agencies in his physical location. And he said, fast forward 3 years, and his competition for talent is at least across the US, if not global, because everybody's gone virtual. And he's struggling because 4 years ago, he was having to manage his travel budgets because he saw his people always wanting to be in person. Everybody felt like things had to be in person. Now he can't get his team motivated to get on an airplane and go see a client. And it's interesting how fast that shifted. And he's recognized, just like you're saying, Kathleen, that the simple step, and think about what it means to our businesses, right? It costs $500 to $1,000 to book an airplane, get a hotel, go somewhere and have a meeting in person. Relative to the amount of business that represents, it's usually a very small amount. And what it says about that personal relationship is just huge. I care about you. I will set aside everything that's going on in my life to travel, to be with you. It's a much more significant thing today than it was 3 years ago. Beautiful example. Hi, Frank. Are you raising your hand because you want to jump in?
Well, I would say two things to that. One is the opportunity cost of the time spent traveling exceeds by far the dollar value of the plane ticket and the hotel room.
Mm-hmm.
And two, that I have been building very trusting relationships on Zoom.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the pandemic has transformed the way I want to do business without impairing the business relationships. So I would get on an airplane, but only in exceptional circumstances.
And that, I think, Frank, is why it is so meaningful today versus 3 years ago,
Well, yes.
right? It is a much more significant gesture today than it was when everybody expected us to be in person having meetings. I agree. And you should know my perspective on virtual relationships, right? I think that virtual relationships definitely can be built very effectively and very deeply. It's a lot of the same things we do. We just need to be intentional about it. A lot of the same things we do in person. We just need to be intentional. Like I said, I'm going to let you all think about your disappointments and personal reflection, unless somebody wants to bring something up about challenges that you weren't able to overcome, or things that you felt that you really struggled with. And I'll give you a minute to think about that. You can put something in chat, or you can just come off mute and talk if you're curious or want to focus on that. Okay. And then consider for yourselves who you've shared deep trust relationships. And don't just think about those relationships where you've made it so somebody else can trust you, but also the people that you trust deeply over the past 12 months. And do that as a reflection. If you want to, you can pull up the chat and just type the first name of someone that comes to mind to really cement it in your head. All right, I want to shift gears a little bit here. And I want you to think about what's already in your survival kit. Right? So what are those things that allowed you to get to where you are today? The tools, how you build trust, and the skills and strengths that you have, or protection, the tent, right? How do you protect your trust relationships? Which relationships let you sleep easy, or which ones keep you up at night? And then this is one of my favorite questions. What fuels you to build trust? And did you feel burned out? What caused you to feel burned out? And then as you think about your fuel, how many matches do you have left at this point? Right? Are you at the end of your tether, or are you feeling like you've got a full stock of fuel? Who's willing to comment on what's already in your toolkit or your survival kit? See, I've got to get my language fixed on that. Hey, Frank.
So I think I approach people as trustworthy until proven otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And that is usually reciprocated. People are more suspicious of me than I am of them, I think, as a default, but they rise to the transparency.
Yeah.
And that, you know, as a young man, I was tended to be a little overwhelming, and I worked really, really hard at not doing that.
What do you mean you worked hard at not doing that?
Thinking before I speak, trying to remember that when I disagree with somebody, it doesn't always matter who's right. Making sure that they feel heard as best I can, which doesn't always work. but as best I can.
Good. Nice. So you have you already have some skills, and one of your biggest tools is your propensity to trust other people, that you're willing to trust other people. That's a pretty big tool to wield. Fastest way to make someone trustworthy is by trusting them. Nice. So Jeffrey, you talk about the need for confidentiality. And you were able to keep it, even when that's really hard. Discretion is a huge part of creating intimacy, that sense of safety that allows us to build trust in a relationship. Thank you for sharing that. What do you all find, how burned out did you feel over the past year? Now I kind of wish that I could do some polls on the fly here, which I didn't have Kathy set up. But, you know, just give a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you're on camera. Were you doing okay by the end of the year, or were you feeling your energy kind of flagging? Yeah, a little bit flagging, maybe some. When you felt burnt out, what are some of the things that contribute to that? Go ahead and just pull up the chat. What causes you to feel burned out? Taking on too much. Yeah. Interesting. Jackie, lack of respect for personal boundaries. Would you be willing to come off mute and explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure.
Jackie.
Hi there, everyone. It's like an old adage, you don't know what's going on in people's lives. And I think that's foundational when you're building trust. To be aware that, you know, if there are some pushbacks, or if you're investing time into something, you've just got to remember you don't know what's going on in people's lives. So I do think when you feel there is maybe a pushback, it may be just a boundary, someone giving you a nod to say, you know, these are my boundaries, please respect them. And even as much as you might have a great level of trust with someone, they too still have personal boundaries, as do, you know, as do you guys too. So that's just something I think we can forget, particularly when, you know, the world goes 24/7, 365.
Yeah, Jackie, I really thank you for sharing that. And it's, you know, it speaks to the balance of our self-orientation, whether we're thinking about ourselves, we're focusing on ourselves versus focusing on the other person, and how sometimes we get very deep into wanting to help other people so much that it almost becomes about us. I had a client who was talking about, we were having a conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And she said she had made a mistake that was, in her mind, really broke the trust with, it's a fellow professor. She said it really broke the trust with some of her students. And she apologized in the moment, but then days later, she was talking to another colleague and said, I really feel like I need to address this. I need to do something more about it. And her colleague looked at her and said, but that doesn't have anything to do with the students. That's about you wanting yourself to feel right about it. You need to stop worrying about that and look at the student. And it was, when she related the story, it was such an eye opener to me, to remember that I need to stop working from what I feel is the right thing, even if I think it's well-intentioned, and very much focus on what's right for the other person. So that other focus, Jackie, is serving you well, I'm sure. So we've got lots of things that burn us out, right? lots and lots of stuff, everything from the culture in which we're working to the workload that we're dealing with, to the amount and the pace of change. So as we think about that and how we avoid the workout or the burnout, think about, and this is part 2 of the survival kit, how can you prepare yourself to thrive in the coming year? I really do hope that you will spend time, maybe 30 minutes or an hour. Find yourself someplace quiet. Put on the spa music if you want to. My electronic device, which I'm not going to say her name lest she start doing things, she has great spa music. You can put that on in the background and just take some time to take care of yourself. Now, before you start thinking that I'm going to go all woo-woo cray-cray on you here, it's actually some fairly easy to find reflections about what's going to get you ready for what's next. For example, reflect on the relationships you have and what gifts do you receive from those relationships that have deep trust? And what gifts do you give to others in those relationships? What brings you joy? Lock in on that feeling of joy so that you can look for that feeling in other professional relationships that you have. Similarly, when you think about your own growth, how do your trust relationships nourish you? Right? If you were a plant, what would be the sun? What would be the water that gives you the growth that you need? Where do you find shade when you need some relief? Right? Really get in touch with what helps you thrive. These are very, very personal questions. And then finally, and here's where I want you to jump in on this one. Tranquility. How do you find peace in your life? Open up the chat and share one thing that you have made peace with this year, or one thing that you are grateful for this year. Last year, 2022. What is one thing that you have made peace with this year? Yeah, thanks, Kathy. Kathy's on it. Kathleen, you stole those words out of my mouth. Some of you probably know this. I spent last winter with my father, who passed away in March, and it was such a blessing to be there with him for the last 4 months of his life. But the first third of the year, I was minimally present at work, and my team, like, they weren't even checking in with me. What do you want us to do? They just picked up the slack and ran with it. And I seriously believe the only reason I am sitting here with you today is because of my team in the past year. And Jillian, you have a supportive boss. What does supportive mean to you, Jillian? Like, what does that look like?
Thanks, Noel. When I talk about supportive, in reflection of the past year, I'm speaking about not just growth when it comes to work, but having a platform and an opportunity to, as you said, become intimate. Yes, we have work to do, we've got targets to deliver, but how are you doing at home, and how's your sister doing? And that has helped, that really helped me manage or get the work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to professional growth, I must confess that that there are opportunities that I have stepped into that I had shied off from initially, but I had my boss encourage me to step up and participate and and be seen and be heard, which I think has really helped me in my career growth as well.
Outstanding. Thank you for sharing that, Jillian. And it speaks to what came up in my first question about your resolutions for 2023 when it comes to professional relationships. A lot of you said it's about that personal connection. And I think Jillian's story is a testament to how powerful having that personal connection is. It also ties back to what Jeffrey said about being able to let go of the self-doubt. There's a great, Kathy, if you could make a note of this, there's a great blog post that Charlie wrote years ago that is basically, they don't care about you and why that's a good thing. And it speaks to this idea that we tend to see the world as very centered around us. It's human nature. We are the center of our own world. But other people are the center of their own world. And so often what we worry about others thinking about us, we're just not even in their mind at all. Which is a good thing when we think about our own self-doubts. It's something we need to work on when we're building trust with others to keep them top of mind. So great comments, Robert. Yeah. So a lot of you are just grateful for being alive and being here and having this conversation. Definitely. All right. So making sure that you're aware of what gives you power, what gives you the strength to grow. This is what's going to allow you to move forward with what's next. Right? So thinking about what you need in your survival kit. We don't know what's coming. Nobody could have told us in 2020 that we were about to spend 2.5 years in practical virtual lockdown, that the way we do business was going to change. Right? And some people thrived through that, and some people really struggled with it. We can choose our own path forward if we have the right reflection and the right skills at hand. So what do you need to make your trust journey easier or better? Right? First, a map. Look at your trust, look at your professional relationships and identify where you can build trust so that you have a destination in mind. Be specific about the people, right? Think about your true north. What are the principles that guide you in your relationships? And how will you get back on track when you go off the course that you've charted for yourself, right? Because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I'm a sailor, and people always joke, they say, anybody who says that they've never made a mistake sailing is either lying or they've never sailed. Right? That's kind of how it is with us. Things happen. It's how we respond to them that matters. What are the tools that you need? What do you need to tighten up on? What might you be able to loosen up a little bit? Right? Are there new tools that you need? Maybe it's thinking about how to engage with people. And then most importantly, if you already have a skill in your tool bag, how are you going to keep that sharp? Right? It's just like with our physical tools. Our trust tools get rusty and dull if we don't use them, if we don't maintain them. And then I think this last one is one of the most important things to consider. Who is on your speed dial? When you need to reach out, when you need to phone a friend, who is that person that you can reach to who will help you stay motivated, help you find the right path? Now, when we do the actual physical product for this, I'm going to have spaces for you to fill in the answers to the questions. We also are not going to leave you without resources. Oops. Tons of resources that are available. The TQ, there's a free version of it, or you can pay $40 and take the paid version of it, which has a much more robust feedback report. Things that you can learn. We've got tons of free resources on the website, blog posts, articles. We have the online learning, the academy, and you can engage with us too. And you all have my contact information. Reach out anytime if you have a question. I know we're at the end of our time here. And so I want to do very quickly with a nod to Martin Luther King. Happy birthday, MLK Jr. What's your biggest takeaway from today as you think about your trust survival kit? Go ahead and pull up the chat and chat to everybody your biggest takeaway from our conversation. Yeah, Les, isn't that nice? I always tell people I have the best job in the world. All day long, I work with people thinking about how to make trust relationships better. It's awesome. Good. Keep these coming. These are fantastic takeaways. And then Kathy, if you can pull up a poll, if you don't mind just giving us some feedback. Just a quick, how valuable was this webinar? We'll give you a minute to do that. Anyone else want to pop in there? The poll. All right, Kathy, go ahead and drop that poll. And I'm going to stop sharing and just leave it open to you all. How helpful do you think this guide is? And are there things that you would like in your trust relationship survival kit that are not in there right now? You can just come off mute and share. You can put things in the chat. If you have something else planned, I thank you for your time.
It's a great refresher, Nicole, and I like the resources that you provide at the end as well.
Good. Good.
I'm sorry, Noelle. Why did I do that?
That's okay. Everybody does it, Kathleen. I know it's not. I always tell people if I correct you, it's either because I'm being introduced or because I don't like you. I'll never correct you. All right. Feel free to send comments to me if you see anything missing, if you see something that will make this a more valuable resource. We are at the end of our time, and I just want to thank you all for being here on our trust journey together. Have a great rest of the day. I'll hang out for a little bit if anybody has questions or wants to chat more, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.